Hey freaks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is JJ, and here on my channel I discuss the stories behind rock and metal concept albums. Today I will be covering Summoning the Lich's most recent album, Under the Reviled Throne. And before I get any further, I need to offer a sincere apology. In my last video, when I covered Summoning the Lich's United in Chaos album, I pronounced their band name wrong the whole video. And I didn't even realize until after I'd uploaded it. I'm sorry guys. I don't have any excuse. I don't know. I don't know why I pronounced it wrong. It's spelled the way that it sounds. And I have no idea why I decided it was not going to be pronounced like that in my brain. So yeah, I'm really sorry. It's kind of embarrassing. I've thought about deleting that video, but I don't really have time to remake it. So moving forward, it's Summoning the Lich. Sorry. Anyway, I'm very excited to be covering this album. It is the second in this trilogy of this high fantasy concept that goes behind the music. So it's really fun to get into some really dark fantasy. Of course, I am a dark fantasy nerd as an author of dark fantasy, so this one has been really fun for me. If you have not already watched my other video on the first album, United in Chaos, please watch that first. But know that I'll pronouncing the band name wrong the whole time. I'll link that up here and maybe down in the description as well if you haven't watched that, because you might need to know some of that background information before we jump into the sequel. Having said all that, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and join my metalhead community. Link is down in the description. From there you get access to bonus content and a monthly newsletter from me, as well as a playlist of exclusive videos that are not available here on my public channel. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so assuming you're all caught up with what happened in the previous album, moving right into track 1, Return to the Soil. Here we see the Lich has conquered all of Rodor, Rodor being the kingdom that we were last in the previous album. So every king and army has fallen to the Lich and his sin. The sin being his unholy army of otherworldly beings of power led by the Lich. I'll get into more detail about his sin in one of the later tracks. But him and his sin have traveled far and spread desolation in their wake. Yet he knows that the human race will rise up once again, because that's kind of what us humans do. We always rise again. And so he sets out to extinguish every last one of the humans in what will become known as the Age of Chaos. So, having decimated the land of Rodor to the west, the Lich and his sin then travel east through the desert wastes to the land of Bastil. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Bastil is my best guess on how to pronounce it. So we're going with Bastil. Bastil is a coastal kingdom known for their shipbuilding, and the people of Bastil feel pretty safe within their kingdom, because they have these huge high walls that surround the kingdom on all sides, along with the coast, and so they feel pretty safe. No one's breached their fortress in pretty much ever, so they feel pretty safe there. However, they are not prepared for what is coming. So, on his way to conquer Bastil, the Lich runs into the Coven of Witches. And I believe these Coven of Witches are the same witches that we met in Hymns of Witches of the West in the previous album. And the Lich offers these witches the chance to smite the humans by joining him, and of course the witches accept. And that takes us into track 2, Reviled Crystal Wielders. And so this song is about the hierarchy of the beings of the Lich's army, aka his sin. And so there is, of course, the Chaos. So the Chaos are sort of the foot soldiers of the Lich's sin. These are his kind of ghouls. They wear the brands of the Lich on their chest, and they grow more evil and undead the more souls that they consume. And so they are sort of lowest on the totem pole. We then have the witches and the other magical beings of the sin, the group of people that the Lich kind of collected in the previous album, along with the witches he just collected in the previous track. They are all sort of like free agents. They follow the Lich because they are united in purpose, wanting to kill all the humans that they can. They've all been recruited from various places and each have unique powers that they use to kill humans with. They don't necessarily lead any part of his army, but they can certainly wreak havoc on their own. And then we get to the Reviled. So they are akin to the Lich's generals. There are 6 keepers of the stone who wield these magic crystals and grant them immense power to command the chaos and spread their destruction. And these crystals may or may not be the same type of crystal that we saw in the song Death Crystal from the previous album. I think it's all linked. So these 6 are Evie and her Trees of Death. Evie, I'm not sure, may have been mentioned in the previous album, though it was spelled differently, so I don't know if it's the same Evie. Could be different. I'm not sure. Then we have Algalorect. I don't know. I think I'm saying that wrong, but that's my best guess. He is the Keeper of the Gate, aka the Dragon Lord of Suffering, who we saw in the track Gatekeeper on the previous album. And then we have Elias, who is this Serpent King. And then we have 2 twin demons. I just named them Twin Demon 1 and Twin Demon 2. We don't really know much about them. And then finally we have the Ghost, whom we also don't really know much about. So those are his 6 generals, his 6 reviled crystal wielders. We then get into track 3, The Forest Feasts. So this is a flash backward in time. So the beginning of this track explains or refers to why the Druids disbanded after the war where they banished the chaos into the void. So the Druids were betrayed. The King of Rodor killed the leader of the Druids using the very sword the Druids created to save the humans, in whom they gave back to the humans for safekeeping. And so they were betrayed by the King of Rodor when the Druid leader was slaughtered by him. So it's this big betrayal that caused the Druids to disband, and after this betrayal we follow one Druid who flees Rodor and wanders the eastern lands for centuries, still believing that humanity can be redeemed. He eventually feels a desire to obtain the magic from the forest of Tain, floating out at sea. So this forest is sort of this magical, sentient forest that floats in the middle of the sea. And our druid ventures there and finds that this forest is maybe not quite so nice, as it eats people alive. So then the roots of the trees grab him around the legs and pull him down to the heart of Tain. And there he finds a spark of power that created the world of Arias. So Arias is, of course, the planet that we're on, where this whole story takes place. And that spark of life was left there by the Bog. And the Bog is this celestial being that created the universe and tasked the Druids with leading humankind. And so the Druid then speaks with Tain, Tain being sort of the essence of the Bog that was left buried within the soul of the forest. And Tain asks the Druid to merge his powers with the forest. If they do, Tain will be able to sustain life without needing to eat quite so many people. And instead, they could use their combined power to grant the souls of the forest that he's already consumed with these magical powers. Not quite sure what exactly they could do, but something more than just sacrificing lives for the sake of Tain continuing to live. And so the Druid decides to merge with this spark of life, and together they become one, and they'll kind of be referred to as Tain from now on, as sort of this united entity that is sort of part druid, part forest, part spark of life left over from the Bog. We then get to track 4, My Horrors Unending. So the people of Bastille call to arms to defend their kingdom against the dreaded Lich and his army of monsters once they learn that he is coming. And like I said before, the Bastille army is pretty confident in their protection of their fortress, being that they have these high walls that no one's ever breached before. However, they're not prepared for the Lich and his sin. So the people of Bastille are quite quickly humbled, and by humbled I mean slaughtered. They retreat from the horrors of the Lich's atrocities, as you know, everyone's just dying horrifically. It's a bloodbath. Our point of view character here is a messenger from the front lines. He is fleeing to warn his people about the sin and their insane powers that they have, when he is caught by a curse that takes over his senses and turns him into a pawn to perform the Lich's bidding. And that takes us into track 5, Bastille Dirge, and this is just an instrumental track where Bastille falls to the Lich and his sin. And on to track 6, The Carrion Fleet, one of my favorite tracks on the album. The people of Bastille are all but defeated. The Sin pick off the survivors, torturing them and drinking their blood, while the few survivors who were able to make for the ships in order to set them on fire in the hopes that they can possibly contain the Lich and his sin and keep him from spreading throughout all of Arias. And so they burn all of their ships to try and, keep him from traveling. However, this does not stop the Lich, of course. He raises his magic, and with a simple command, he brings all the dead people of Bastille back to life to repair the fleet with their own flesh. And so we have this zombie fleet, this carrion fleet made from human body parts and guts and all that gross stuff. And so the Lich and his sin all board these macabre ships, and the undead set sail. Track 7, Arias Groans. So the spark of life that is part of Tain, the remnants of the bog mentioned in track 3, senses the despair of the souls on Arias. So while this is happening, the Lich and his army are setting sail on these ships made of flesh and embark on spreading more chaos and misery throughout Arias. However, his actions have woken Tain. Using the new power granted to this forest through the fusion with the druid, the forest then picks up its roots and crawls out to go to war with the Lich. Track 8, Will to Survive. So an eon ago, when the essence of the bog merged with the druid, like I mentioned in the earlier track, I think this is what woke the forest up, which is now, the forest was already sentient, but now it's fully whole and conscious. And of course, this forest / druid fusion, who we call Tain, now calls to arms all who live above their roots. And so Tain sacrifices the weakest of their followers to fuel the magic that the forest needs in order to pick up its roots and defeat the Lich on the high seas. Meanwhile, a single ship was able to escape the massacre at Bastille. They fled to the south, where they then warn the believers of the bog of the coming of the Lich. Together, the survivors of Bastille and the believers to the south, who I will talk about a little bit more in another track, they team up in what is called the Alliance of Amelung, and they are united to defeat the Lich. Meanwhile, Tain crawls through the water to declare war on the Lich. So things might be looking up for the heroes of this story, but we'll see. Then on to track 9, Potion Seller. So this is another flashback to centuries earlier at the end of the war, where the druids helped lock the chaos away to save the humans, only to be betrayed by the kingdom of Rodor. So after this betrayal, the druids left alive scatter back to their homelands. And this track tells of one female druid who wanders the land filled with rage at the betrayal of her order by the very people that they just saved from desolation. So, of course, during trying times, when misery abounds, there are always those who seek to capitalize on the fear and desperation. And so we learn of a potion maker who is selling bottled brews to help people forget their miseries. And our female druid accepts a potion and falls into this bliss of oblivion. And while she's in this state, she lets slip a few druid secrets about magic, science, alchemy, and most importantly, about the bog. But more on that in a moment. On to track 10, the Void Gate. This is again another flash backward in time, just after the humans betrayed the druids. Throughout this album, we get to see a lot of druids and their reactions to this disbanding due to the betrayal. So a lot of them are reacting differently. We had one that, still believed in the redemption of humankind. We had one who just wanted to forget and, lose herself in oblivion, because she was so upset. She wanted to just go away and not feel anything. And this druid that we were meeting in this track is he's angry. He wants revenge. So a little bit like the Lich, he is so overcome with anger at the the betrayal that he wants to take matters into his own hands. So like I might have mentioned earlier, the druids were created by the bog in order to help guide humankind. But, after the betrayal at the end of the war, the druids are, a lot of the druids are questioning why they even helped in the first place. So this druid decides he wants to overthrow the humans. And so he seeks to capture the power of the void that they just locked away behind the veil. And so he decides to create a gate into the void to steal its power in order to kill all of the humans. And so he travels to Assyria's islands where he tricks the people there into helping him build this infernal arch. And finally, after much time, he calls his magic and opens the gate. And the horrors of the void suck him in and devour his soul alive, which of course is not quite how he had planned it to go. But with his final breath, he manages to seal the gate so that the void stays locked away. And that takes us into track 11, Praise to the Bog. So going back to the female druid who spilled her secrets while under the influence of the potion, we learn that she was supposed to keep the secret about the bog hidden from the humans. Like, humans were not supposed to know about the bog. Yet after her death, her scribes founded a religion formed around worshipping the bog. But of course, as with most religions, the truth gets kind of twisted along the way. And this sect that was founded on the idea that bog is God, since they know that the bog is responsible for creating all life on Arias, Over time, the bog worshippers began performing rituals and brutal child sacrifices in order to gain favor with the bog. And so a great divide splits the believers and the non-believers. And so this is kind of this like science versus sacrifice idea, where you have these religious zealots who are willing to perform human sacrifices on the non-believers, and then you have these non-believers who want to believe in science and reasoning, and not this all cult-like craziness that these bog worshippers are all about. This causes hundreds of years of war and suffering between these two nations of people, and bad blood runs pretty thick. Now that we have the survivors of Bastille having fled to the south and teamed up with the believers of the bog, will the alliance of Amelung withstand the centuries of hatred and distrust among these two peoples? Will the people of Arias be able to band together to defeat their common foe, or will they fall and leave nothing standing in the way of the Lich and his quest for world domination? So that's the kind of the cliffhanger that we're left off with in this album. So this whole album kind of went on to explain a lot of the backstory about, the motivations behind the Druids and why some of them made certain decisions, and the whole betrayal that happened that, pretty much broke the trust between the Druids and the humans, and that caused everything that happens afterwards. So this is definitely like a build up to, I think, a big finale that is going to be coming in the third installment of the trilogy. I'm really looking forward to that one, but it might be a little while yet. So please let me know what your thoughts are on this album. This was definitely my own personal interpretation. Though the lyrics are pretty clear as far as like what the story is, there are definitely parts that I had to interpret on my own that I was like a little bit unsure if that I was going in the right direction or if I was interpreting it the correct way that the band had intended. So let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Let me know if you think I'm wrong in any aspects, or if you just interpreted the lyrics differently or imagined the scenes happening in different ways. I'd love to hear from all of you, so please let me know. And yeah, I definitely had fun with this high fantasy album, and I'm really a big fan of this band, and I am excited to see where they go from here. So anyway, thanks you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe and like and share and do all of those fun things for the algorithms. And if you really want to support what I do here on this channel, make sure you join my Metalhead community. Link is down in the description. Totally free, and I sometimes do giveaways. Got a little bit of merch in the mail recently, so I'm going to be giving some of those away here. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Till next time.